We would sometimes see him by the shore, Icarus undrowned. A hand, a foot, a curl of hair frozen by time. Probably as much that sailors used to see mermaids. It's been said that one of us locals gave the ghost its name. Likely a teacher type because of its pretentious tone. The ghost's name had been based on that myth about the boy Icarus who flew too close to the sun and ended up drowning in the sea. The second part of that ghost's name had come from the god named Prometheus, who had been bound to a rock to have his insides feasted on by a bird. Being punished for something I can't remember. Prometheus had eventually been unbound by Hercules. If not that, he would still be chained to the rock. His innards eternal delicacies, like the fried chitlins my granddaddy is still probably feasting on in heaven. Man, he loved those. But this Icarus undrowned we have haunting our stretch of the Gulf is said to be the ghost of a young man who died about 10 years ago. A swimmer on break from college who had lofty ambitions of swimming in the Olympics. A young man who had gotten too bold or too crazy and had, like a lunatic, tried to swim the bay during riptide. The purple flags of warning would have been beating the air like the sun beating down on Icarus, melting his wings as he went higher and higher. But there was no plunge seaward for our Icarus. He was already in the water when it began. So Stemmy and I went out again to the stretch of the beach where you try to see the hints of this fallen would-be Olympian. Kids were getting closer and closer to that industrial storage facility out there. It was said that the ghost liked that area, especially because of the size and the scope of the place was some kind of metaphor for all the ghost's ambitions while he was still alive. You could see those tall and almost equally wide sheer buildings from miles off. The fencing was pretty elaborate. It had multiple metal levels topped with a particularly menacing layer of barbed wire. We thought we'd one-up those other kids by climbing over and into a fenced-off area of beach close to the storage facility. What we picked to climb over was a smaller, sort of wing to the larger facility. But we half expected to be stopped by a security guard when we climbed over. Toting our lunches in our book bags, the other half of us was not expecting to be able to scale that thing. But the multiple levels of fencing helped us, and we were able to find grooves and climb it and even get over the barbed wire. I cut my ankle a little, but Stemmy was unscathed. As we made our descent, he joked that we were training ourselves for a life of crime in case our other plans didn't work out. We got down in the sand, bracing ourselves for being caught immediately or spotted on a security camera. But it was just us and the beach that we could tell. This smaller, less conspicuous area was exactly what it appeared from the outside. If anything, it seemed it was a part of the actual storage facility. I nudged Stemmy and pointed to some containers of mainly the cylindrical variety stacked up on each other. Those containers poked their noses up over the intervening fence of the main facility. I didn't remember being able to see them from the outside, but maybe it was something that could only be seen once you were over this fence. "What do you suppose are in those?" I said. "Far as I know," Stemmy said. "They store steel and other metals here." "Those containers don't really look like they're for metal," I said. "Maybe they hold waste products for somebody. Seems like it'd be a violation this close to the water, but who knows?" Still peering around for security, we made our way towards the ocean. We'd hopped a fence into private property to get a better spot on the beach to sight a ghost, but at the end of the day, we were just kids on a lunch break from school. It's not like we'd really broken into anything, and we weren't playing hooky. One of the advantages of going to our high school is that you can have lunch at the beach. As long as you're a junior or senior, something I like to brag about to my cousins freckled across cities in southern Alabama. We made our way to a ridge and a large log that was so sun-dried it felt like a rock, and took our sandwiches out of our book bags. I thought about Prometheus from that myth bound to that rock of his, and how the only thing I was bound to do was eat this sandwich in my hands. I try not to think of that bird feasting on Prometheus's innards. "Hey," Stemmy said, peeling back the bread of his shrimp po' boy from the deli we had stopped at on the way. A pickle and a little of the spicy orange-red sauce splattered on the sand. "Just as I thought." Stemmy said. They skimmed on the shrimp. Gonna have to catch me a fish and put it on here. Did you bring a pole? Nah. Then you're not gonna be able to catch any fish and put it on there. I was thankful I had ordered their flagship sandwich, which, funnily enough, was called the flagship, and above the salami, ham, turkey, real crab meat, and all the veggies and condiments was pierced with toothpicks holding up little red flags. There was plenty of meat on here because it was supposed to be their best sandwich. We set to eating, watching everything around us as we did so. The shore was about 100 yards downslope from our log on the ridge. It really did feel like the kind of log folks should sit on if they wanted to see an Icarus undrowned. Driftwood and pieces of an old boat and its engine dotted the shore. The cerulean sea was marbled with foam, and I thought those waves couldn't get to the shore quickly enough, how they tumbled over each other to break. Coming from the fence line bordering the facility was a man dragging something long and heavy and all bagged up in black trash bags. Probably 70 yards down from us. My first thought was that it was a storage facility worker hauling something down to the water to get rid of it. Almost as soon as I thought, could there be a dead body in there? The man, probably in his mid to late 40s, turned his head towards us. It was a hard, burning gaze, the kind Mama would have said could turn a pig right into fried bacon. What's his deal? Stemmy said. Could be a dead body in there, I whispered, giving voice to my thought from earlier. Do you think we should run for it? Stemmy said. No, I said. There's no way he's dragging a dead body in broad daylight. Come to see a ghost and see a murderer instead, Stemmy said, chuckling. But he was breathing hard. Stemmy was short and very thin, which is where I supposed his nickname had come from, but he breathed sometimes like he was heavyset. He claimed he didn't have asthma, but I don't know about that. And it seemed his tendency to make light of harsh situations, like how he had tried to laugh his way through Mrs. Juniper croaking on us mid-quarter, laughing respectfully, mind you, well, seemed that had its limits. It's something else in there, I said. Can't be that. But the man dropped the end of the heavy burden he had been dragging, advanced quickly up the shore towards us, sand arcing up behind him like a Grim Reaper's scythe, and raised an arm. A gun. It was a black handgun, small enough to conceal but large enough to pack both a punch and a kick. Stemmy's breathing did double time. I couldn't get enough air myself. We weren't here, Stemmy yelled at the man. Quiet down, Stemmy, I said. I wasn't ready to die before I'd turn 18. You quiet down, he said. One of us has to take the initiative. He rose up from the log and put his hands out in front of him. I had a premonition, an image of the gunman mistaking Stemmy's rising hands for having his own weapon. A smoking hole through Stemmy's brain, a brain that was working on getting itself a scholarship to the University of Alabama. He was planning on becoming an engineer. He said he'd start by fixing that lopsided bridge in our city. Stemmy was bright, and good people didn't deserve to die, especially not so young. Neither, I figured, did I. When a loud noise erupted, I winced, the kind of wince that shut off every sense in my body. But it was the booming of the man's voice. Hands by your sides, he said. Don't say another word. Come over here and walk in front of me. Hurry, or I'm gonna get an awful lot of blood on those sandwiches. You can put those down. You'll eat them later. The man with the gun, which was soon to our backs, hurried us down until we were waist deep in water. The salt bit, and though it was springtime, the coolness of the water made me shiver and gnash my teeth to keep them from chattering. At some point, he told us to turn around and face him. You're probably very nervous, the man said. I am too. I didn't plan on killing a couple of kids today. You're not going to let us go? I said. What's the point of following your orders? Stemmy said. Would you think I was just bringing you down here to knock your memories out with the back of my gun? You don't have to kill us, too, Stemmy said. Maybe you had your reasons. Maybe it was an honest fight. And if it wasn't, you could just turn yourself in. What you walked into, the guy said, is bigger than me. I'm not even the one who offed this poor fellow. I'm just the one bringing down the body. If I don't, things are going to get out of hand. Is it because of the ghost? I said. Because of Icarus Undrowned? He shook his head, training the weapon on Stemmy's face. It was in this way that my premonition from earlier was getting ready to happen. Smoking hole through my friend's brain. My gut ached. I felt a weird sense of humiliation at the relief that I might get to die second rather than first. Kids like you, the guy said, are supposed to be outside of business like this. It's grown person business, and only for a select few. You should have heeded the no trespassing signs. Should have listened to those cautionary stories about the ghost. Well, here's a bit of adult wisdom coming at you. Though I can't see how it'll do much good now. There are things worse than ghosts out there. Like the people who are paying me to do this and keep it quiet. Same people who own this facility. Same people who would have bad things done to my family if I don't cooperate. I gotta placate them bigwigs, and we gotta placate what was born from their sins. The one day we didn't, about 10 years ago, that was a day of blood and reckoning all up and down this side of the coast. It was a day that took a lot of money and dead on top of dead to fix and keep shut away from the rest of the world. You see, some of us grown folks associated with the facility had been taught the rules for redeeming what we'd put in the water for years. Back when we could get away with it. But we didn't heed those rules at first. Sort of like how you didn't heed those trespassing signs. I'm sorry, kids. You don't know how sorry I am. I got kids of my own. I expected, wished for, a smart aleck remark from Stemmy's direction, but he'd gone quieter than I ever remember him being. I had closed my eyes in anticipation of a murder I was too cowardly to try to stop. The sea behind us sort of rose up, as if it also were anticipating the coming violence. The gun fired. Seeking an image or two before my own light was snuffed out, seeking a last visual memento of my murdered friend Stemmy as his body sank beneath the water. What I saw instead surprised me. Stemmy was still upright. The gunman was tangled with someone else in the surf. It was a young man in a competitive swimmer's outfit and goggles. But the tint of his skin was all wrong, all grayish green, and there was a growth coming out of his body and extending down into the waves. The more I looked, though, the more I understood that the swimmer was the one coming out of whatever he was attached to. And whatever it was the swimmer was extending from, by way of a slick, darker green stalk or tentacle, its darkness stretched on and on beneath the surface of the water. It was larger, I was sure, than a whale. Here, then, was Icarus Undrowned. Someone who should have drowned but had not been taken, not by death, but by something in the water. Taken and changed and vilely preserved as he was shackled to something that should never have been. Become the agent of an unearthly hunger that could only be placated through communal sacrifice. The swimmer savaged the other man, rending the other's skin with his overgrown nails, taking his gummy face and plunging it straight into the man's abdomen, tearing into him like a predatory beast born from civilization and yet apart from it. Screams polluted the air. Someone else would notice. They just had to. But Stemmy and I stood frozen and alone, bearing witness as the swimmer took the other, still screaming and dropping blood and giblets of meat, out over the waves and down, down, and away. Stemmy and I ran up from the shore, climbing up the fence and over the barbed wire so quickly that by the time we got down there, we were dripping our own blood over the sand. And we didn't stop running until after our bare feet began to be scorched by the concrete of the parking lot. Only then did one of us have the courage to finally reach into a pocket for his cell phone and make a call. There was a dead body and trash bags still there by the shore. And we could think of no sane and truthful way to explain how it got there, or where it had been going.